Hello, and welcome to our presentation called We Are All Connected, One Welfare and Humane Education in Building Capacity and Fostering Empathy in Our Future Leaders. Our presenters are Dr. Magdalena Smerdel, Liz Davis, Elise Patterson, and myself, Amanda McKibben. This session is presented in two videos. In the first, Dr. Smerdel explores the One Welfare framework and discusses how we are part of an integrated living system that is constantly affecting and being affected by other elements of that system. We invite you to watch that video to learn more. Concepts such as One Welfare are critical as they act as a compass to guide our work. In order to realize the full promise of a concept like One Welfare, it's critical that it's connected to practice in the real world. Humane education aligns closely with the ideas put forth by One Welfare and provides a powerful channel through which to bring the wisdom of One Welfare to action. And that's where this video comes in. In this video, we explore the pillars and goals of humane education and take a brief look at a humane education learning resource called Animal Smart. We'll also explore the positive impacts of a real-world program rooted in One Welfare and humane education. So, what is humane education? Well, broadly speaking, humane education seeks to foster respect, empathy, and compassion for the living world. It also builds critical thinking skills and encourages meaningful action. To get a better understanding, let's take a closer look at each of these points. Oftentimes, when people think of humane education, they think that it's just about being kind to animals. And that's true, but humane education has a much broader scope than only being kind to animals. It focuses on nurturing respect, empathy, and compassion for all living things. So yes, animals, but also the earth and one another. Through its focus on empathy and compassion, humane education takes learning beyond the basics of classic instruction. It adds context and values and builds awareness of our relationship to the other living beings with whom we share this world. At the very heart of both empathy and compassion are creativity, caring, and connection. So through building empathy skills, children learn how to imagine and value the experiences both similar and different to their own. In addition, they learn that through connection, there can be growth, healing, and well-being for all. Another pillar of humane education is the building of critical thinking skills. In a world facing complex issues related to social injustice, animal and environmental ethics, children must be provided with the skills to think critically and creatively about these matters. Humane education teaches children to consider the priorities of and impacts to all involved, to examine and question their assumptions and biases, and to research and expand their knowledge about the world around them. Humane education emphasizes the value of applying both heart and mind to the process of integrating respect, empathy, and compassion with fact-finding and critical thinking to arrive at thoughtful and creative solutions. Its goal is to help children and adults alike appreciate the interconnected nature of the living world and understand the ways in which their beliefs, decisions, and actions impact the lives of others near and far. The last pillar is taking meaningful action. Humane education regards children as change makers and leaders and seeks to help them to discover that in themselves as well. Humane education supports children in making different decisions in their own lives, everything from being kind to one another or not littering, to initiatives with a broader scope, like starting an Animal Friends action group at their school or in their neighborhood. As children take on positions of responsibility and influence and leadership, we want them to arrive with the sense of connection to the world and their place in it, and feel prepared and empowered to take action that considers the priorities of all living things. So, how can we ensure humane education is reaching the minds of our children? Well, in 2018, the Ontario Ospca launched the first edition of a humane education program called Animal Smart. Today, this learning resource consists of video and activity resources, as well as manuals that include complete lesson plans developed to foster empathy, promote a sense of responsibility, and inspire connection with animals and the environment. The lessons also promote mutual respect among learners and encourage collaboration with their classmates and family and participation in their local and global community. While the learning goals of the program were informed by the animal-centric mission of the Ontario SPCA, the lessons themselves were developed by educators. This approach facilitated the integration of key elements identified as important to teachers. In this respect, Animal Smart is a learning resource made by educators for educators. Accessibility of the Animal Smart program was carefully considered. After all, even the best resource can gather dust if access is challenging. So to maximize accessibility, a free access approach was taken whereby all video and manual materials can be accessed online, free of charge to anyone. In addition, printed copies of the written resources are available as an on-site resource, and each Animal Smart manual is translated into both French and Spanish to make it available to educators and students teaching and learning in those languages. All lessons can be adapted to suit individual needs and aptitudes and to integrate with other programming to augment learning in all contexts, which is exactly what my colleagues Liz and Elise did and will be discussing further in the presentation. Humane education in any form is valuable and contributes to raising awareness, fostering compassion, and creating change. It's well suited for integration into programs that rise to meet the needs of the child, such as those that seek to build capacities like social emotional well-being, resiliency, and leadership. While humane education can be delivered in a variety of ways, it's important that it become integrated into formal programming and education to achieve large-scale impact. Ideally, endorsement at the school board level would be most effective, as such backing would provide resources and opportunities to support the delivery of humane education in the classroom. While such long-term efforts are in place, valuable work can and is being done at the school and classroom level. Experts and groups focused on human rights, animal welfare, and environmental conservation can connect and partner with teachers and other educators to bring experiential and real-world learning to the classroom. Such groups have a powerful opportunity to participate in meaningful and sustainable change by developing resources and programming that educators can implement in their classrooms, like the Animal Smart program, to nurture the hearts and minds of our future leaders. And with that, I will pass it to Liz and Elise, who will share the development and impact of just such a program. Thank you.
Good morning. It is such a pleasure and privilege to be here with you, sharing the learning and the work and the innovative partnerships that we've been able to develop with our local Humane Society. We have developed the work with the intention of building resilience and skill sets with our students who have come from vulnerable communities and who we found over the last number of years have been struggling. And we've been looking for many ways to improve their success, achievement, and certainly their well-being. So we start this presentation in thinking about from theory to practice and Elder Shelley Mandakwe's quote, "This is a very important time. We're learning new ways. We're having challenges engaging our young people in many sectors. We must work together to engage our children, our youth. They are our future." So taking you back a little bit, we are from Ontario and we have to work in the school system, of course, as many others would have to with our Ministry of Education components. And a number of years ago, the ministry challenged us to really think about resilience, well-being, and how we would narrow the gaps for students, particularly those with learning challenges, and at the same time build capacity and look for some creative and innovative solutions for ways that we could do that. We made the decision to work with two outside organizations because they were doing the work that we were thinking about and having tremendous results with re-engaging kids from vulnerable communities. Research done with our York University partners found really two key findings for our data in York Region District School. In particular, we were working at that time with a committed staff. They'd worked to build instructional capacity. We had won a Ministry Equity Award and jumped 125 points in what we were using as formal measures in Ontario at the time with our EQAO scores. And yet, despite these successes, for our students, we continue to have a group that were just not engaged, connected at school, and a group that we were really worried about as a staff, particularly for being at risk of significant risk of not graduating from high school. And so when you take a look here at the two groups that came up in the research that we did with our university partners, there are really two profiles that surfaced for us. One is just what we term the double jeopardy profile, students who struggled as a result of both academic and behavioral issues, had a lot of challenges, destructive peer groups, and what we term the invisible middle profile. You would recognize them. Quiet, flying under the radar is a term I hear in schools a lot, but they were also our largest group of students at risk, and they were struggling without displaying obvious signs of risk in terms of academic achievement and behaviors, but they were disconnected. A lot of absences, anxiety, and other things that surfaced for us. So in the work that we're going to discuss in this presentation, we really had a lot of things going on for the double jeopardy profile already, but wanted to really intentionally and thoughtfully target ways of re-engaging the invisible middle profile group. So as a board, I think it's important to set a little bit of context, and we are working again with the Ministry of Health in Ontario. And the model that was chosen for our school mental health and well-being is what they have called the Aligned and Integrated Model, or AIM for short. And when we took a look at re-engaging and considering that a really important part of well-being and connection for kids, we decided to build a program in that middle section of the triangle that you can see, really looking at preventative measures, how we're supporting, accommodating, and modifying, and then bolstering social and emotional skills and resiliency. One of the things we found is that our kids really are resilient, but they weren't thriving. And we needed them to move beyond survival to thriving. And that was an important part of really choosing and working with again, the agencies that we chose to work with as part of this work. The other research that interested us, particularly in connection with mental health and well-being, is the research that discovered that giving back makes us happier than receiving support. And in fact, the thing that made us happiest, and our children too, is real connection to other people. So those were among several considerations that we needed when we began to develop our programs. We borrowed from the work of two American researchers, Bonnie Bedard and Sarah Trubridge, looking more deeply at what were the protective factors for students and children that we needed to think about while we developed a program that really we hoped would re-engage our kids and develop some of the skills they might need with problem solving and leadership, conflict resolution, and self-confidence to manage the things that the world throws at us. And it's a complex global challenge for all of our kids. And we found that research surfaced three things: caring relationships, which I'm sure is not a surprise, high expectations with support, really, really critical, and opportunities to participate and contribute. And so we took a look at those three things. And certainly since we began the work, the other evolution, much time in this presentation, but I think is critical for education systems, is to think about how those high expectations for support connect to culturally responsive pedagogy as well. So just a quick history. I mean, we really started our first partnership with a group called Trails Youth Initiatives, and they were working primarily with another board of education and a full-time program, and we were looking at a part-time, more mentorship program. And we started working with them in 2013. Of course, COVID reality for all of us has changed the way that we work and the things that we've been able to do. And both of these programs have been on pause now for the last couple of years because of those pieces. But generally speaking, they were meeting once a month, and they had designated staff working with them, very specifically using outdoor education sites as part of the work to bring students together. A wonderful educator will talk more about the program and the specifics of it as we move through this presentation. And then our OSPCA connection, again, once a month at the site and meeting weekly with staff at the school to continue to reflect and connect around the concepts, strategies, and skills that we were trying to help the students to learn. Connection with the OSPCA specifically has been incredible. They, as you've heard about, developed an animal smart curriculum, which focused really on 4 key areas, and those areas were beautifully complementary to the things that we were trying to do with the students to re-engage and connect them to the idea of being a community and also providing service. And those 4 areas are here for you. You can see them on the slide: care and commitment, choices and decisions, empathy and respect, and then relationships. And what we did is take those 4 areas with this particular and build these skill sets connected to the work we felt that the group needed to do based on the vulnerabilities of the community and what they surfaced themselves as partners in their own education and learning. So we were looking at participation and service. We were looking at positive and effective communication skills, nonviolent communication as one method and strategy for building ownership of the choices that they were making. We were really looking at observing behaviors and listening to understand, and then with relationships, trust and vulnerability and teamwork as key and core concepts that the educators involved developed with specific tasks, goals, and learning plans that worked across the other pieces that they did. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my wonderful educator extraordinaire, Elise Patterson, to tell you a little bit more how that works and the details.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So happy to be here and so excited. And I just want to say before I start, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have worked with 3 amazing women, Magdalena, Amanda, and Liz. It's been such an honor to get to know each of you on a personal level and a professional level. And I'm just so grateful for those relationships. So as Liz was saying, Liz and I began a few of these programs, one for our Double Jeopardy group, focused with the Trails Youth Initiatives, and then this one with the OSPCA, focused for what's called the Invisible Middle group. I'd like to start with a story, and this story was a moment for me that really shifted how I wanted to teach and what I really understood to be education as I began my journey through education as a student, sitting at desks and using worksheets, and I found myself sometimes cut back there as a teacher, and I wanted to learn more. So I actually joined an organization called Trails Youth Initiatives, and I worked for them for a little bit. This was about 7 years ago. And this story is from that time. The director of Trails Youth Initiatives at the time was Julia, and she saw a huge impact of animals and with people in the relationship. And so she had partnered with a horse sanctuary. And so the students of the program at Trails would attend the sanctuary and be partnered with a horse and to learn from. And so this story is about a day at the sanctuary and a young girl who I'm going to call Sarah just for privacy reasons. And so all the kids were paired with these awesome horses, and they had all these great stories and were getting along really well with their horse, except for poor Sarah. Her horse Rosa was angry. Her horse would kick and bite and was just not an easy horse. So Sarah began to get like super frustrated, as would I, and hearing all these great stories at like lunch and break from the other students. And she was like, like I can't work with this horse. And so eventually she ended up getting quite angry at the horse, and she ended up physically pushing it. And the man who owned the sanctuary came over and was like, whoa, hey, I see you're frustrated, and I just wanted to chat about this horse. This is a pretty special horse. Rosa had some really negative relationships, and someone found Rosa in a ditch, bleeding and brutally abused. And so Rosa was taken to the sanctuary, and they brought Rosa back to health. And so Rosa's beautiful and kind and loving, but sometimes she doesn't trust humans. And it takes her a while to learn that she can trust humans again. And Sarah was so moved by this story that she began to observe Rosa and was gentle with Rosa and understood that their relationship was going to take time. Later, when we all sat together and chatted about our experience, Sarah shared that she loved Rosa and Rosa was her favorite horse. And she shared that the story of what had happened to Rosa, and she explained that she understands Rosa because Rosa is like a mirror to her. And she's realizing that based on some negative relationships that she's had, she struggles to trust adults and people. And to me, it was just this beautiful reflection, and what she gained from it was this understanding that I still want relationship and I still want people to try, but I'm just not always ready. But if you can return to me kindness and patience, then I can find the space to start to trust again. And this just changed everything for me. I mean, makes me cry even just thinking about the story. And so I want kids to have that relationship. And so when the OSPCA was open to this partnership, and then they also had at the Stouffville location in Ontario, they also had, which from the schools that we were at is about 20 to 30 minutes, 100 acres of land. I was like, yeah, sign us up. And so here's what we got from this program. So we decided to, Liz and I decided that connection to nature, connection to animals, connection to ourselves, and connection to others are what we wanted to focus on. And it lined up so beautifully with One Welfare that Magdalena presented on, and Animal Smart that Amanda presented on, that it just worked so well together. It's like it was meant to be. And so connecting to nature, we were looking at helping students develop relationships that are reciprocal in nature. We all have relationships to the land. We all have relationships to animals. We all have relationships to others. What those relationships look like, that now is, are we, in terms of the land, are we consuming? Is it one-sided, or is it reciprocal? And are we caring for the land? And how are we teaching that? Often in our school system, we're so focused on curriculum and grades and standardized testing that we don't see how to make people human. How do we unlearn our colonial ways, and how do we become more human? Now, this is an innovative practice. This isn't new. There's lots of people, cultures, school of thoughts that have been doing this for years and years. However, in our mainstream education system, this is not the case. And so how do we start to bring this in where educators, administrators, and students see this as important work? Connecting to the land and helping students shift from consumers to caretakers and partners of the land is incredible. Here are some things that the students say about working on the land. Here's some things that they don't say, but they show. Now, the other part was connecting to animals. And as you hear from the story of Rosa, the importance of connecting to animals is so much stronger than I initially thought in my career, and so much more important. The empathy that students can develop with animals is extraordinary. And this worked so well with the Animal Smart curriculum. So we often would really use the Animal Smart curriculum to help guide us in this. Here's some things that the students said. As with the story of Rosa and Sarah, very similarly, often the students would see themselves, and they would, with understanding animal behavior and really observing animal reactions, they were able to see, oh, like that's the animal's boundary. Like it doesn't really want me to come any closer right now. It doesn't fully trust me yet. And I'm just going to be patient, and I'm going to respect that. And in conversation, we'd be able to get to places where we were able to understand our boundaries. So students would be like, oh, I really don't like when people do this. And I need to now realize that I need to put a boundary there, just like the animal does. And I need to just use positive and effective communication to help support that. Connecting to others was another key component. Some of these students often didn't attend school, so their attendance was low. Often these participants also were quiet in class. When somebody sees your potential and somebody sees you as a leader and as an important person, that can all change. I was a student that was in invisible middle. I was quiet. I often didn't attend school. I was afraid to be me. I didn't fit the system. And so I often see myself in a lot of these students, and it's so great to see them be able to be themselves and be excited and passionate and have a voice. And so as they began to create their voices, we actually got to a point where they had ideas that I didn't even think of. And it would sometimes throw me off because I'd be like, okay, I gotta calm down my teacher here and kind of become the learner. And it was fun. And so they actually came up with the idea that they wanted to host classrooms. And so they wanted to bring classes in. These students here were in grade 6, and they wanted to bring in grade 3s and what they had learned, and they wanted to lead them through. And so it was like, okay, let's do it. And so they started to create these programs to teach younger students what they had learned, and it became this amazing like mentorship. And this was all their idea. And it was incredible. So in the video, you're going to get to see that as just in a couple minutes. And then it's all their programming. Just before we start the video, I just want to say thank you so much for attending our workshop, and thank you so much for being here. We're so grateful to get to share our work. Thank you, and hope you enjoy.
Here, and you guys are going to explain to everybody what they do when they go in to see the cats, okay? So can you guys quiet and listen to these three?
So when you go in with the cat, what you need to learn is use a hand sanitizer so you don't infect the cats or and another rule is when you get in there, don't run around it and don't be loud because you could strain them or scare them.
It was uncomfortable. It would probably meow a lot, tell you or hiss. That is a sign probably to get away from it or give it some space.
You don't want to run up to him and just like start playing with them, start bothering him. You have to make sure that he knows you're there to like give him company. He was one shot.